Have you ever found yourself in a relationship that seemed too good to be true, only to discover, over time, that it was hiding a painful secret? What if, despite your best efforts to relive the vitality of your youth, the very thing you hoped would bring you happiness ends up slowly chipping away at your sense of self-worth? Imagine this. At 70 years old, you meet someone who makes you feel alive again, sparking feelings of desire and love that you thought were long gone. You dive in, eager to prove that age doesn't define you, that you still have what it takes to be the man you once were. At first, it feels like a dream come true. Compliments, affection, and intimacy that make you feel cherished. But soon, those sweet words turn sharp, and the very relationship you believed would bring fulfillment begins to unravel. In this video, we'll explore the journey of a man who thought he had found his last great love, only to be faced with a devastating truth. Love, when not built on mutual respect, can easily turn toxic. We'll dive deep into the complexities of aging, relationships, and self-worth, and examine the emotional toll that striving to meet unrealistic expectations can take on us, especially when it comes at the cost of our dignity. Why should you watch this video until the end? The emotional toll of self-doubt. How our desire to prove our worth in love can sometimes blind us to the deeper, more painful truths. The struggle with aging. What happens when the pressure to maintain youthfulness leads to a loss of self-respect? The cost of self-sacrifice. Why giving everything to someone else, even in the name of love, might not be the best path to happiness. A powerful lesson in reclaiming your worth. How self-love and dignity can help you rise above toxic relationships and rediscover your own strength. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand the true cost of staying in a relationship that diminishes you, but you'll also learn why embracing your age, your wisdom, and your true self is the key to finding a love that nurtures, rather than depletes, you. This isn't just a story of heartbreak. It's a story of rediscovery, resilience, and the power of reclaiming your own narrative. Stay tuned to find out how this journey of self-rediscovery unfolds. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I encourage you to click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on today's topic. If you enjoy the content, please comment 1 below. If it doesn't resonate with you, leave a 0. Your feedback is crucial as it helps me create better videos that align with your interests. Now, let's get started. He had no idea that the radiant brightness of his new relationship was concealing a shadow, one so insidious, it would only reveal itself in fragments over time. What began as an exhilarating spark, a thrilling rediscovery of desire and vitality, would soon evolve into an overwhelming struggle he wasn't prepared for. He had no inkling that this relationship, so promising at first, would become a battleground for his self-worth. As the days passed, the complexity of their connection began to unfold, and it became painfully clear this would not be easy. His friends reacted, some with disbelief, others with quiet concern. The younger people in his life scolded him, their voices a mix of judgment and warning. At 70 years old, he still had the vigor of a man half his age, and yet, he found himself desperate to prove it. It was as if his very existence hung on the belief that he could conquer this last great love story of his life. He wanted to prove not only to her, but also to himself, that he still had something to offer. Every ounce of his being yearned to be seen, to be desired, to feel alive in a way he hadn't experienced in years. Even if it meant winning and keeping a young woman by his side, he couldn't ignore the gnawing hesitation that had slowly wormed its way into his thoughts. That hesitation, at times, felt like an obsession, a voice inside him whispering that this was his final chance to make a mark, to live a story worthy of his years. He threw himself into the relationship with an intensity that felt almost desperate, remaking himself in the image of a younger man, attempting to defy the relentless passage of time. The price, however, was far greater than he could have ever imagined. The transformation, both physical and emotional, took its toll in ways he couldn't see at first, and the consequences would only become clear much later. In the beginning, everything seemed almost perfect, like a dream come true. She showered him with words that made his heart swell with a kind of affection he hadn't known in decades. Her compliments were laced with tenderness and admiration, as if she truly saw him, not just as an older man, but as a man worthy of love and desire. Her compassion made him feel cherished in a way he hadn't experienced since his youth, awakening something deep inside him that he thought had been lost forever. She knew how to touch him, how to seduce him with every glance, every smile, and every gentle word. It was intoxicating, and he couldn't resist. For the first time in years, he felt strong again, virile, as though the clock had been turned back and he could taste the sweetness of youth once more. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Che lavished attention on her, eager to please, eager to be the man she seemed to want, the man he wanted to believe he still was. He treated her like royalty, desperate to fulfill every need, every whim, in the hope that his devotion would be enough to keep her by his side. But slowly, so slowly that he barely noticed, something began to shift. What had once been tender and playful soon became an air of superiority, subtle demands woven into every conversation. At first, he brushed it off, telling himself that it was just part of her personality, that she was only teasing him in a light-hearted way. But the comments grew more frequent, more pointed. She began to imply that he wasn't measuring up, at first gently, and then with a growing, biting edge. She told him that he needed to take better care of himself, that men his age should have more energy, should be more physically capable. He tried to laugh it off, pretending it didn't bother him, but as the comments continued, the laughter became hollow, painful, and filled with the sting of self-doubt. She would tell him, with a smile that no longer seemed warm, that he was too old for her, too slow, too predictable, too far removed from the man she had imagined for herself. The final blow came when she turned her criticism to his most intimate moments, the ones where he had always believed his strength lay. She told him, with cold, brutal honesty, that his performance in bed was inadequate. She said he was too slow, too careful, too much like an old man trying to relive his youth. It cut through him like a knife. Everything he had held dear, every fragile hope that he could still provide the affection and passion he once had, shattered in an instant. He had always believed that love wasn't bound by age, that intimacy was about connection, about the emotions shared, the tenderness and devotion that transcended the physical. But here, facing her relentless criticism, he couldn't help but wonder if he was deluding himself. He tried to argue, tried to convince her that age didn't define one's ability to love, to give, to create happiness. But his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Her harsh judgment sliced through him, leaving him raw and exposed. In a moment of defiance, he remembered the power he still held. His experience, his wisdom, his ability to give affection in ways that were more nuanced, more thoughtful than mere physical strength. With renewed passion, he assured her that, despite his age, he knew how to delight in ways no younger man could match. His words were filled with a fervor that burned bright, hoping to prove not only to her, but to himself, that he still had worth, still had the ability to love deeply, to be loved fully. But instead of receiving the validation he so desperately sought, she mocked him. She dismissed his words as the frantic attempts of an aging man trying too hard to be relevant, to be useful. The laughter that followed her words wasn't sweet, wasn't tender, it was cruel. And it tore him apart. In that moment, he felt humiliated, shattered. The deep love and devotion he had poured into this relationship seemed to count for nothing. His feelings mocked, his worth diminished to a mere joke. Yet, in the depths of his despair, he tried to tell himself that this was all just a test, a trial of patience, endurance, and love. He convinced himself that, over time, she would recognize his worth, see the depth of his devotion, and understand the kind of love he could offer. But with every cutting remark, every dismissive glance, he felt himself shrink further and further into insignificance, until, ultimately, he could no longer recognize the man he had once been. The vibrant, strong, hopeful soul had been ground down to dust, buried under the weight of her cruelty, leaving him with nothing but the hollow ache of a love that had turned toxic and cruel. To anyone observing his story from the outside, it might seem easy to condemn his decision to stay in such a painful, one-sided relationship. But for those who have lived a long life, the complexities of love, especially its most painful, consuming form, are all too familiar. Love, in its truest essence, has the power to hold us hostage. It can trap us in a cycle of self-doubt, longing, and heartbreak, urging us to endure things we would never have tolerated if we could see with clearer eyes. He wasn't just bound to her youth anymore. No, it was more than that. He had become attached to the idea of proving his worth, of showing her, and perhaps even himself, that he still had something valuable to offer, despite his age. He was held captive by the belief that anyone, could still see past his wrinkles, his slowing steps, and appreciate him for the man he truly was. At first, he had convinced himself that love, that elusive, powerful force, could overcome the natural barriers of age. He had seen it in others, older couples who had found ways to make it work, who had embraced each other despite the years between them. He had hoped, foolishly, that the same magic could unfold for him. But now, as he looked back, he realized that it wasn't just love that had kept him in this toxic orbit. It was his pride, his need to prove that age wasn't a burden but a badge of honor. The years of life he had lived, the wisdom he had accumulated, all seemed to pale in comparison to the youthful vigor she brought into his world. And so he stayed, hoping that someday she would see him not as an aging man but as someone deserving of admiration, someone who could still be the source of joy and passion. One evening, after another devastating conversation that left him feeling smaller and more invisible than ever, he found himself standing before the mirror. The reflection staring back at him was that of a 70-year-old man. His face lined with the years he had lived, his eyes carrying the weight of countless experiences. He saw a man who had loved deeply, who had given everything of himself, and yet had been left with so little. And yet, beneath that reflection, he saw something else, a flicker of realization. He saw that he had been denying himself the one thing that could heal him, self-love. It hit him like a wave. He could no longer live in the shadow of someone else's approval, particularly from someone who seemed incapable of seeing beyond his age. At that moment, something within him shifted. He was no longer willing to subject himself to the humiliation, to allow her criticisms to define him. With quiet determination, he decided to confront her. He would not lash out in anger, but instead speak calmly, with the strength of someone who had endured enough. He was ready to end the relationship, no matter how much it hurt, because his dignity was more important than her fleeting affections. In that instant, he realized he was finally reclaiming his power, standing up for the man he had become. When he spoke, his voice wasn't trembling with fear but steady with the wisdom of a man who had learned the hard way that love must first be rooted in self-respect. As he entered her space that night, something was different. The atmosphere, once charged with anticipation and excitement, now seemed colder, more detached. She, oblivious to the inner turmoil he had been experiencing, greeted him as she always did, her beauty, her youth, her energy as vibrant as ever. He looked at her, the woman who had been his world for so long, and for the first time, he no longer saw just the radiant figure before him. He saw a person who had never truly seen him, not for who he was, but for what she wanted him to be. And in that moment, the weight of his decision became clear. This was it. This was the point of no return. She stared at him in disbelief, as if his decision had come out of nowhere. Her eyes were wide, her lips slightly parted in shock, and for the first time in their relationship, he felt a sense of triumph. The weight of her mockery and rejection had been lifted, and in its place, he found a small but profound sense of liberation. The conversation that followed was uncomfortable, even painful, but it was also cleansing. It wasn't about his fragility. It was about his strength. Strength that had come with age, wisdom, and the deep understanding of his own worth. For the first time in a long while, he felt the weight of his years as a source of power, not weakness. Every wrinkle, every gray hair, each experience, had shaped him into a man capable of giving love on his own terms. But even in this liberation, there was a bittersweetness. He had invested so much of himself in her, in the hope that she might see beyond his years and love him for the man he was. That hope was now shattered, and the pain was sharp, a reminder of the vulnerability that love, at any age, brings. As he walked out of her house that night, he felt a peace he hadn't known in months. It was the kind of peace that comes from shedding the need to prove yourself to anyone, especially someone who only saw you as a means to an end. He understood that sometimes we must accept that not everyone will recognize our value. Not everyone will see us for who we are, and that's okay. By submitting to her for so long, he had lost himself in the process, but by freeing himself from the toxic weight of her judgment, he rediscovered the man he had been all along. A man capable of loving with grace, self-respect, and dignity. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. The days that followed were not easy. Loneliness, like an old friend, returned to haunt him. But this loneliness was different. It wasn't the suffocating, soul-crushing loneliness that comes from being trapped in a relationship that diminishes you. This was a solitude that was clean, dignified, and quiet. In the stillness, he found a new sense of purpose. He realized that even without her, he was still a good man, a man worthy of love, not because of his physical capabilities, but because of the love he had to offer. He understood finally that true love isn't something you should have to sacrifice your dignity for. It is the love that accepts, respects, and values you for who you are, not for what you can give or how you can look. As weeks turned into months, his life began to shift in ways he hadn't anticipated. He reconnected with old friends, visited places that had once filled him with joy, and rediscovered hobbies he had long abandoned. The laughter that filled his days was no longer hollow, no longer tinged with the ache of unmet needs. He began to savor the quiet moments, those fleeting instances where he could sit alone and reflect, knowing that he had been true to himself. The things that once seemed trivial now felt meaningful. He no longer measured his worth by someone else's standards. Instead, he found peace in his own company, in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that his value was not tied to anyone else's vision of him. Each wrinkle on his face, every gray hair in his beard, was now a testament to the life he had lived. Each line told a story, and every new memory he created added to the tapestry of his existence. He had come to understand that aging wasn't a curse, but a privilege, an opportunity to deepen one's connection with oneself and with the world around them. What mattered now was his own peace, his own fulfillment, and the quiet joy that came from knowing he was enough, just as he was. He was free, not from the world, but from the need to meet its expectations. And in that freedom, he found his truest form of love, a love that began and ended with him. He had become whole again, not because of anyone else's approval, but because he had come to know and embrace the depth of his own soul. And in that acceptance, he found his greatest love of all. This story serves as a profound reminder to older individuals grappling with doubts about love and relationships. The desire for affection, attention, and companionship is deeply human, especially as one ages. However, the lesson it imparts is clear. Love should never come at the expense of one's inner peace and dignity. As time passes, the lessons we learn become more valuable, and only those who have lived a long life can truly grasp the importance of preserving their self-worth, even in the face of youth's fleeting promises. Looking back, he saw that this painful relationship was not just a mistake but a valuable lesson in self-acceptance. It was a reminder that true love cannot be rooted in someone else's approval but must begin within oneself. He learned that no matter how much one desires affection, it must never come at the cost of one's identity or self-respect. For him, ending the relationship was an act of reclamation. He had rediscovered his integrity, a part of him that had been slowly eroded by the constant need to prove himself. His journey was a reminder to others, especially those in their later years, that self-love is the foundation of a healthy relationship, one where dignity and respect are mutual. This story also highlights the importance of understanding one's value, regardless of age. Many would view it as a cautionary tale, urging older individuals to never allow the pursuit of love to overshadow their own self-worth. The character's story is not only a lesson in self-love, but also a lesson in understanding that, despite physical changes over time, we are no less valuable. Each wrinkle, each gray hair, is a mark of experience, wisdom, and survival. They are not signs of fragility, but symbols of strength and resilience. From this story, I want to offer 5 critical lessons for older individuals, especially those struggling with relationship issues. 1. Do not lose yourself in illusion. The first lesson is that, no matter how tempting the desire to recreate the glory of youth with someone younger, we must keep our feet firmly planted in reality. While the appeal of youthful love may be alluring, it often hides the harsh truth that many of us, like the character in this story, end up investing time and energy into a relationship that doesn't appreciate us for who we truly are. The temptation to prove that we still have vitality and capabilities can cloud our judgment and lead us to accept humiliations we would never have tolerated at earlier stages in life. The pursuit of love should never come at the cost of your dignity. It's important to remember that love should be a mutual exchange of respect, admiration, and care, not an arena where one constantly tries to prove their worth. Relationships based on illusion will only leave us feeling more isolated and unseen. 2. The power of self-love. The second lesson is the transformative power of self-love. The character in this story tolerated caustic comments about his age and physicality, thinking that doing so in the name of love was noble. However, he soon realized that by accepting these criticisms, he was giving up a part of himself. He was sacrificing his dignity in an attempt to prove that he was still worthy of affection. True love must begin with self-love. To be loved by others, we must first love ourselves completely, with all our flaws, vulnerabilities, and strengths. The foundation of any healthy relationship is rooted in the belief that we deserve respect and kindness, and accepting anything less opens the door to further degradation. Self-love isn't selfish. It's necessary for sustaining healthy relationships. 3. The courage to choose solitude. The third lesson this story offers is having the courage to say enough. Sometimes, the most empowering thing we can do is choose loneliness, but not as a punishment. Instead, it's a form of peace, a temporary solitude that offers the space to rebuild one's self-esteem. Choosing solitude over the pain of humiliation takes incredible strength. In fact, it was in this decision that he truly reclaimed his identity. Solitude is often misinterpreted as loneliness, but it is far more than that. Solitude allows us to reconnect with ourselves and rediscover what truly matters. It gives us the space to heal, to reflect, and to find strength in our own company. The character's choice to walk away from the relationship was not an act of weakness, but an act of self-preservation and inner peace. 4. Aging is a treasure, not a curse. The fourth lesson is that, as we age, our experiences and memories become invaluable treasures. Too often, society leads us to believe that youth is the only period of life worth celebrating. However, the character learned that his wrinkles, his gray hair, every sign of time, tells a unique story. These marks were not symbols of decay but of wisdom, of a life fully lived. People who fail to recognize the value of aging are often trapped in superficiality, seeking fleeting beauty or external validation instead of appreciating the profound richness that life brings with each passing year. Aging, he realized, isn't something to hide or be ashamed of. It is an opportunity to reflect, to learn, and to pass on wisdom. The physical signs of age should be worn with pride, for they signify a life well lived. 5. True intimacy comes from understanding, not perfection. The final lesson from this story is that intimacy doesn't have to look the same as it did when we were younger. As we age, physical closeness may change, but affection and emotional intimacy remain just as important. In the past, He believed that his physical vitality was key to expressing love, but he soon realized that true devotion could be expressed in many other ways. The key is to offer closeness, affection, and intimacy, understanding that these things can evolve as we grow older. Relationships, especially in later years, are not about meeting youthful standards or trying to fit into preconceived molds. What truly matters is mutual respect and understanding. It's about honoring the person you are now and allowing yourself to be loved for who you are, not who you once were. The fifth lesson from this story is the importance of embracing our true selves, without fear or shame. The elderly man in this story could have continued trying to prove his worth to the younger woman, but in doing so, he would have sacrificed his sense of self. Instead, he chose to stop pretending and began living according to his own truth, regardless of how others might perceive him. There's incredible power in being unapologetically yourself, especially as we grow older. The experiences we've had, the choices we've made, and the wisdom we've gained are not weaknesses. They are sources of strength. As we age, we often face the temptation to cling to the ideals of youth, whether it's physical appearance, vigor, or the desire to be seen as relevant. But, as this story illustrates, the essence of who we are doesn't reside in our youthfulness. It resides in our character, our journey, and the lessons we have learned along the way. The elderly man's choice to walk away from the relationship and claim his identity marks a pivotal moment of self-discovery. This is the moment when he understands that his true value lies not in what others think of him, but in how he perceives himself and how he treats himself with the dignity he deserves. Many people fear aging, and some even fear the loss of attraction or relevance. But the elderly man's story teaches us that true worth isn't about maintaining a youthful appearance or trying to recapture lost years. It's about knowing who we are, what we've learned, and the love we've experienced along the way. We all carry these stories, and they shape us into individuals of great depth and value. In the face of external pressures to conform, it's critical to remember that our stories are our own, and they are worthy of celebration. The experiences that come with aging, both the joyful and the painful, create a tapestry of life that no one can take away from us. These moments of love, loss, joy, grief, and triumph are what truly define us. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. This story, while painful for the elderly man, ultimately becomes a triumph of self-awareness and self-respect. He recognized that, even in his later years, he still had the power to make decisions that would affect his happiness. He no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. He needed to prove it to himself. By doing so, he regained his dignity and a sense of peace. The courage to step away from a relationship that didn't serve him, to choose his own well-being over external validation, was a profound act of self-empowerment. In our later years, we may find ourselves at crossroads, especially when relationships and external expectations try to define our worth. The elderly man's journey teaches us that the most important relationship we have is the one we cultivate with ourselves. The act of self-empowerment is not about rejecting love or relationships altogether, but about making conscious choices that prioritize our integrity, our peace of mind, and our self-respect. In the process, we may find that our relationships with others, whether romantic, familial, or platonic, become richer and more fulfilling when we stop seeking validation and start living authentically. The message here is that, no matter how old we are, we still have the right to love ourselves fully and expect to be loved in return. We don't need to settle for relationships that don't value us, just as we don't need to chase after anyone who doesn't see our worth. Age doesn't diminish our value, it only enriches it. With each passing year, we gain the opportunity to become more of who we truly are. And that is something no one can take away from us. We often associate youth with the pinnacle of beauty, energy, and success, but this is a limited view of what it means to be truly alive. Aging brings with it a deepening of experience, an accumulation of wisdom, and the opportunity to reshape ourselves into someone even more remarkable than we were in our younger years. The elderly man in this story learned this lesson in a painful but profound way. By walking away from a relationship that no longer served him, he discovered a deeper love for himself, a love that was unconditional and without compromise. Finally, it's important to remember that loneliness isn't something to fear. It's often in the quiet moments, when we are alone with our thoughts, that we come to understand who we truly are and what we need. As we age, we may find that we no longer need the constant affirmation of others, especially if it comes at the cost of our dignity. The elderly man in this story learned that solitude, when embraced with the right mindset, can be liberating, not isolating. It's a chance to reconnect with ourselves, to rediscover our passions, and to honor our own needs. Solitude, in its truest form, is a place where we can nurture our self-love and growth. It provides the space for clarity and reflection, offering the freedom to evolve into a version of ourselves that is free from the expectations and judgments of others. While society may view aging as a time of decline, in truth, it can be a time of flourishing, if we choose to see it that way. The elderly man, by embracing his solitude and finding peace within himself, discovered a depth of fulfillment that transcended any external relationship. His story reminds us all that the most important relationship we can have is the one with ourselves. The elderly man's journey was not just about ending a relationship. It was about reclaiming his life, his dignity, and his autonomy. It was about walking away from the need to prove his worth and instead acknowledging that his worth was already inherent. The relationship may have been a painful chapter, but it was also a pivotal moment in his personal growth. Through this experience, he learned that real love, especially as we age, isn't about matching someone's expectations or conforming to societal standards. It's about being authentic and honoring ourselves first. As we continue through life, we can learn from this man's story that aging doesn't diminish us, it refines us. It allows us to peel away the layers of external validation and return to our core, to who we truly are. We don't need to live for others, to chase after fleeting affirmations or the illusions of youth. What we need is to live for ourselves, to embrace our stories, to value our wisdom, and to know that every wrinkle, every gray hair, and every moment of our lives is a testament to the strength, resilience, and beauty we carry within. In the end, this story teaches us that aging is not a time to hide or shrink back, but to stand tall in our own truth, to honor the journey we've walked, and to celebrate the person we've become. It's a reminder that love, whether romantic or self-love, should never be a battle for validation, but a peaceful, affirming embrace of who we are and all that we've learned. True worth doesn't come from how others see us, but from how we see ourselves. And when we learn to see ourselves clearly, with compassion and understanding, we realize that we have everything we need to live the rest of our years with dignity, grace, and authenticity. As we reach the end of this journey, it's time to reflect on the powerful lessons we've learned together. The story we've shared today isn't just about one man, it's about all of us, navigating the complexities of love, self-worth, and the harsh realities of aging. It's a reminder that, no matter how old we get, our true value isn't defined by someone else's approval or physical vitality. Instead, it lies in our ability to honor ourselves, embrace our wisdom, and stand up for the dignity we deserve. So, what have you learned from this story? What part of this journey will you carry with you and put into practice in your own life? I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share the one lesson that resonated with you the most. And if you found value in this video, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world, and it helps us continue to bring stories and lessons like these to more people just like you. Remember, the most important love story you'll ever have is the one you write with yourself. Stay true, stay strong, and let your wisdom guide you. Thank you for watching. The message here is that, no matter how old we are, we still have the right to love ourselves fully and expect to be loved in return. We don't need to settle for relationships that don't value us, just as we don't need to chase after anyone who doesn't see our worth. Age doesn't diminish our value, it only enriches it. With each passing year, we gain the opportunity to become more of who we truly are. And that is something no one can take away from us. We often associate youth with the pinnacle of beauty, energy, and success, but this is a limited view of what it means to be truly alive. Aging brings with it a deepening of experience, an accumulation of wisdom, and the opportunity to reshape ourselves into someone even more remarkable than we were in our younger years. The elderly man in this story learned this lesson in a painful but profound way. By walking away from a relationship that no longer served him, he discovered a deeper love for himself, a love that was unconditional and without compromise. Finally, it's important to remember that loneliness isn't something to fear. It's often in the quiet moments, when we are alone with our thoughts, that we come to understand who we truly are and what we need. As we age, we may find that we no longer need the constant affirmation of others, especially if it comes at the cost of our dignity. The elderly man in this story learned that solitude, when embraced with the right mindset, can be liberating, not isolating. It's a chance to reconnect with ourselves, to rediscover our passions, and to honor our own needs. Solitude, in its truest form, is a place where we can nurture our self-love and growth. It provides the space for clarity and reflection, offering the freedom to evolve into a version of ourselves that is free from the expectations and judgments of others. While society may view aging as a time of decline, in truth, it can be a time of flourishing, if we choose to see it that way. The elderly man, by embracing his solitude and finding peace within himself, discovered a depth of fulfillment that transcended any external relationship. His story reminds us all that the most important relationship we can have is the one with ourselves. The elderly man's journey was not just about ending a relationship. It was about reclaiming his life, his dignity, and his autonomy. It was about walking away from the need to prove his worth and instead acknowledging that his worth was already inherent. The relationship may have been a painful chapter, but it was also a pivotal moment in his personal growth. Through this experience, he learned that real love, especially as we age, isn't about matching someone's expectations or conforming to societal standards. It's about being authentic and honoring ourselves first. As we continue through life, we can learn from this man's story that aging doesn't diminish us, it refines us. It allows us to peel away the layers of external validation and return to our core, to who we truly are. We don't need to live for others, to chase after fleeting affirmations or the illusions of youth. What we need is to live for ourselves, to embrace our stories, to value our wisdom, and to know that every wrinkle, every gray hair, and every moment of our lives is a testament to the strength, resilience, and beauty we carry within. In the end, this story teaches us that aging is not a time to hide or shrink back, but to stand tall in our own truth, to honor the journey we've walked, and to celebrate the person we've become. It's a reminder that love, whether romantic or self-love, should never be a battle for validation, but a peaceful, affirming embrace of who we are and all that we've learned. True worth doesn't come from how others see us, but from how we see ourselves. And when we learn to see ourselves clearly, with compassion and understanding, we realize that we have everything we need to live the rest of our years with dignity, grace, and authenticity. As we reach the end of this journey, it's time to reflect on the powerful lessons we've learned together. The story we've shared today isn't just about one man, it's about all of us, navigating the complexities of love, self-worth, and the harsh realities of aging. It's a reminder that, no matter how old we get, our true value isn't defined by someone else's approval or physical vitality. Instead, it lies in our ability to honor ourselves, embrace our wisdom, and stand up for the dignity we deserve. So, what have you learned from this story? What part of this journey will you carry with you and put into practice in your own life? I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share the one lesson that resonated with you the most. And if you found value in this video, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world, and it helps us continue to bring stories and lessons like these to more people just like you. Remember, the most important love story you'll ever have is the one you write with yourself. Stay true, stay strong, and let your wisdom guide you. Thank you for watching.